Well, hello, friends. Ryan here, professional life coach, Enneagram educator, and your host for this episode of Fourward Bound with the Enneagram. You know, the Enneagram is a powerful tool for building understanding, compassion, and achieving growth in our lives, grounded by 9 types or ways that our personalities and egos are structured. The conversations in this podcast are designed to illuminate the Enneagram in action by hearing directly from individuals who are working with the Enneagram and their type in their lives. The views reflected in these conversations are personal, and so what one person shares may not be true for all others who identify as their particular Enneagram type, and that's okay. My encouragement: listen with compassionate curiosity. Thanks for being with us. So today we are moving close to Enneagram Type 9, often referred to as the Mediator. And my guest today is my friend Liz, who identifies as an Enneagram Type 9. So welcome in, Liz.
Thank you very much, Ryan. Glad to be here.
Well, I'm glad that you're here. How are you feeling about being on I would say the old, but it's really the new podcast this morning?
I'm excited for this conversation. I love talking about Enneagram.
Okay, good. Well, I do too, and I love talking to you, so it's going to be a good time. Liz, if it is okay with you, what I'd like to do is start for our listeners just with a broad overview of the type. I'm going to play a recording that I've made for that, and then we'll quickly move into a conversation about your experience with the type. Does that work for you?
Wonderful.
Okay, great. Let's take a look together at Enneagram Type 9, often referred to as the Mediator. As a body center type, along with Type 8 and 1, the Type 9 leads with this sense of stability and harmony that is instinctual, grounded in their gut center. This familiarity with their body center may lead 9s to have a natural ability for regulating their emotions through physical activity or relaxation techniques. In contrast to how types 8 and 1 experience the body center, for type 9, it is more about maintaining inner stability and harmony over moving toward assertive action or perfectionism. Our type 9 friends embody a worldview that is focused on mediating or keeping conflict at bay. They see the world as an interconnected place that hangs in careful balance and see conflict as a threat to the unity of the whole. And so, Type 9 sets out to avoid the detachment from love and wholeness that they anticipate in the presence of conflict. The Mediator believes that to get along, we need to go along. And so, 2 primary driving attentions or emotions emerge for Type 9s: conflict avoidance and what we refer to as sloth, inertia, or self-forgetting. First, let's look at conflict avoidance. It's this focus on harmony and unity. They're very natural and comfortable places for Type 9, with a keen knack for finding common ground and fostering positive relationships. An ability to see things from multiple perspectives and finding creative solutions to problems. A strong and natural sense for empathy and compassion may lead Type 9s to work or situations that require caring for or helping others. These are beautiful gifts, though there is a tendency to overplay this hand and in the process eclipse other equally important aspects of their lived experience. Which brings us to this notion of sloth, inertia, self-forgetting. Now, this is not necessarily laziness. Rather, it's about a tendency to avoid taking action or making decisions that could disrupt their sense of inner peace, especially if that action could create waves in relationships with those around them. But this over-focus on those around them, at times at all costs, can lead to a pretty organic forgetting of their own needs, wants, and desires. Whether the Type 9 is in touch with it or not, there is, of course, a set of personal needs, wants, and desires that call to us from within. Avoiding or ignoring these as we over-attend to everyone and everything around us can lead to frustration or anger. It flies in the face of this sense of harmony that is so important to the 9, and so it may take the shape of passive-aggressive behavior as opposed to outright bursts of anger. And now we look at what we call the virtue for the type, this highest expression of their potential. Think of it as keeping all of the gifts for the type and then also uncovering or remembering a piece of truth that has been forgotten along the way. For type 9, we refer to this as right action. Think of right action as characterized by decisiveness, energy, and engagement with the world. By embracing action, type 9s can break free from the inertia of sloth and find the courage to assert themselves and pursue their goals. The work here is about perceiving a correct course of action and staying on track without becoming diverted by inessentials. Type 9s are supported in doing this work by remembering and believing that they matter, that they are important, and that holy love, unity, oneness, connection is natural law, not something that can be disrupted, even by conflict. So, I think it is important to remind ourselves and everyone at this point that this is just a place from which to start. We are not caricatures of a type. We are complex individuals and we've got patterns, but we are also adaptive. And so, Liz, I'm excited to bring you into this conversation, and I want to just extend an invitation for you to begin by sharing a little bit with us about an overview of your experience. What does it mean to be a 9?
What does it mean to be a 9? To me, to be a 9 is to seek to be in harmony with others. I think it really is a sense of, at its best, feeling wholly myself when I'm wholly with the community that I really love and cherish. And so having a shared mission and vision for the world that allows us to drive to a better place. At the core, that's what brings me the most satisfaction, the greatest happiness.
I love that. And I think anytime we're in a conversation about the Enneagram and a type and a pattern, it's really easy to very quickly get to all the quote unquote negative aspects of it or the opportunity to break free or grow. And so I'd rather spend just a minute here on the front end of the conversation acknowledging the gifts for the type. And so would you share a little bit about how this experience of the 9 that you have, how do you see it playing out as a very beautiful thing and a gift?
Well, as a 9, talking about the gifts is my comfort zone.
There you go.
There you go. What I love about being a 9 is that I feel that people are able to genuinely be themselves with me. I think the capacity for really leading with listening is, I don't know another way. That's how I start. And in doing so, I feel like I get to have meaningful relationships with folks from many facets of my life, that I'm able to walk between groups and spaces that might not always feel comfortable to others, but I find a way to be together with others. And that's one of the things that I love most about being a 9, that through listening, I'm able to find some common ground with really anyone.
Yeah, I love that, Liz. And I can affirm that, like both in my experience, you and I have known each other for a number of years and have worked together. My experience with you and with other folks who are dear to me who are 9s. I personally have this sense of like, you can show up with anything and the 9's going to be okay with it. They're not necessarily going to respond with big emotions back, which in my personal experience as a 4 is welcome because I feel like I probably bring enough big emotion for the room. And so, yeah, I would acknowledge that as really good and high work. So as we talk about these driving attentions for the 9, I know a lot of 9s feel some kind of way about the word sloth. And so, I think it's important to contextualize that in a variety of dimensions, this notion of inertia or self-forgetting, and then also the focus on conflict avoidance. What comes up for you in your experience and with the 9 from either of those two concepts?
Sure. I think one of the things that made identifying myself as a 9 difficult was the characterization of laziness.
Yeah.
Because my life is really very active and quite busy in a way that others say to me they can't. I hear from others, how do you do all of the things you do? So lazy didn't feel like the right word, but the idea of self-forgetting is very true. And sometimes I can overwork because I'm forgetting to take care of myself. I'm forgetting that my needs matter as well, or I still know that, but I think other needs become a priority.
Yeah.
The self-forgetting, I think, is the better description to me than sloth or laziness. The piece that I do recognize is I absolutely move slow, right? Mm-hmm. Even in my framing this is mm-hmm. taking carefulness to find the right words to describe it, because I don't want to be misunderstood and I don't want to speak without understanding what is the context that I'm putting it into in the room. So I always want to listen to the other perspectives. And sometimes that can be a strength, that when I do move to action, I can bring a really well-rounded perspective to pieces. I can wait to move to action too long, and the world will have moved ahead before I've gotten myself together. And that can be a challenge.
Yeah. Liz, I know personally that you are so active and involved in so many things. For our listeners, would you be willing to sort of rattle through what some of those things are that occupy your time and energy?
Yeah, sure. So I am the executive director for the Cabarrus Arts Council. I sing with One Voice Chorus and have for 2 decades now, and have been really not only a singer, but really involved in the leadership of that organization. I have been involved in other community organizations, the Plus Collective, for community giving. I'm a parent, so I have raised 2 wonderful children. Yeah, lots going on.
But is it a fair summarization to say that several of the things that you involve yourself with are, well, first, they're group-oriented things, and oftentimes around a cause?
Very much so. It is hard for me to imagine myself in a workplace where there wasn't a true sense of connection to why that work was happening and how it was improving our communities. That I think then I would get really lazy. I wouldn't have a reason to keep giving my best.
Yeah. And is there a line that exists between you and the group or the cause, or do you find yourself more embodying the group and the cause in your participation with it?
I find that giving to the groups becomes a part of my heart. That through the chorus, I have found family that are cherished friendships that are part of my lifetime. And so in that way, it is very close. Also, I don't absorb people's needs as my personal need in the way, like I don't, I think for a long time, I wondered if I was a 2 as we were going through kind of selecting, but I found that the 2's need to see people follow through on their action was not my need. That as a 9, I can let the group be who it is. And when it wants to move forward and when it wants to create difference, I can be a part of helping to push that agenda towards betterness.
Yeah, I love it.
If that collective will isn't there, I'm probably not going to lead it.
Yeah, so it's almost this sense of merging with what the existing group will is, less than it is necessarily being on the leading edge of it. Does that Is that a fair representation? Maybe not.
I think that's often true. And that's why I think it really matters to me to find groups whose work really align with my values.
Right.
Because when that happens, then I don't experience as much conflict.
Right. And the leadership feels more organic and natural.
Exactly.
Yeah, I see that. Can we touch in for a minute on the conflict avoidance piece? What can you tell us about being in the midst of conflict?
I feel it physically. Right? The idea of the 9 being the gut center, it is my gut that feels really nervous when conflict arises. I feel shaky. Of physical manifestation for me of that conflict is happening.
Yeah. I want to pause with that for just a second, Liz. That is the most beautiful description. I want to thank you for that. Nervous and shaky. I think that really gives folks who are listening something to hold on to as they are considering the type. What is your tendency then in reaction when you sense that shakiness or that nervousness? What do you do?
Immediately I get quiet. I will wait on others to do something to move the conversation. Is my instinct is to remove myself so that I'm not the story that I'm telling myself when I remove myself there is then I won't make matters worse. What I have learned is that stay present, because I probably am not going to make matters worse. Then I have an opportunity to make things better. But I have to coach myself through that. My instinct is going to be to retreat. But that's where I think the Enneagram has really benefited me, is I've been able to think about, okay, I can feel the nerves. I know that I'm shaking. My 8 is going to tell me, keep speaking up. My 9 is going to tell me, you have a sense of what the values are and what is right here. That doesn't mean I necessarily have the answer to the conflict, but those become my reminders of don't run away yet.
Yeah, and I love bringing in this concept of the wings and how you've got resources on both sides of you on the Enneagram to help you through these situations of nervousness or where you feel like you're sort of pulled off your center. So, the strength from the 8, the principled nature of the 1, really grounding the ability for the 9 to lift off of that conflict. I'm curious, anything else you would share as far as this is beautiful, like anything that you have as far as a practice in the moment of sitting with conflict that helps guide you through that?
I think something else that I've begun to do more, especially as I've been in positions of leadership, is to name out loud, this is a tense experience for us all, which is a way of letting the room know I'm going to slow down right now because that's what I need to listen. That is a way of letting people know that if I'm slowing down, if I'm not speaking as much, it's because I'm caring about what's happening in the space, not because I'm disengaging. That has helped me. It helped me stay in the moment, stay in the space. I think it also helps others to take a pause who might be kind of driving ahead. And
well, I just want to affirm again, before we move on, I think it is so beautiful, this notion of naming. This is conflict. We can navigate through this. I can navigate through this. We may need to do it at a particular pace, but we're going to start just by naming it. Good work on that, Liz. You mentioned about the process or the journey that you took to determine your type as a 9. I'm curious to hear a little bit more about that experience. So you played with the idea of a 2. Anything else that you would say about other types you considered? And then ultimately, what was this experience of embracing the 9? Was it a quick run to it and fall into its arms, or was there a resistance to that? What was your experience?
Well, so I think one of the things of being a 9 and going through kind of the process is oftentimes you start at the very beginning. And so you start by reading 1, and then 2, then 3, then 4. You don't get to 9 until the end. And I think one of the gifts of the 9 is being able to kind of identify the values of each type. And so there were many that I was like, yeah, there's this piece that feels right. But the rest of that is not true. I'm not a perfectionist. I don't need others to necessarily take my advice. Through each of the pieces, nothing was really quite the right fit. When it got to the 9, I think most of it felt very right. The piece that I resisted was the idea of the 9s are angry. And when I read, I remember saying to Angelina, who was facilitating the workshop, but I'm not angry. So it did take me a moment, and hearing like that would be something that would be typical of a 9 to say, because it is that anger that you're repressing. And
so can we sit with the processing of anger for a minute? I'm curious where that landed.
I think it was a sense of, I don't think people perceive me as angry.
Right.
And so why would I define myself by that anger?
Yeah.
But when I sat with it, I realized anger for me really manifests more as resentment. I feel resentment when I am left out. And often I'm the one who's pulled myself out.
Gotcha.
I think that's where the anger lives. It's not necessarily directed at others. It is a sense of, hold on, why was I not as connected? And I think often it was because I wasn't as willing to share the uncomfortable feelings that I had, that I wasn't being as whole with others as I was allowing them to be with myself.
And so am I hearing, Liz, is it fair to connect dots between the source of that resentment, by the way, beautiful word, and this notion of self-forgetting?
It's very linked. Sometimes the question came to be, why don't you see that I'm not okay with this? Because it's very self-evident to me, but I have not allowed myself to express that to others. Yeah. I just wait for them to notice it. And that's that lack of inertia and self-forgetting that then creates the circumstance that I most want to avoid.
Yeah. And so folks who are listening with us who are contemplating how to navigate a person in their life who they believe is a 9, what are some tricks of the trade that you might offer to them to play with more effectively navigating their relationship with that 9?
One of the greatest gifts that people give me is the gift of time. Just be with me. If you sit with me long enough, I will take the time to share with you what's on my heart. But that's not going to be the first interaction or the first few minutes of an interaction. I'm going to take time to listen to you, hear what's going on in your world before I ever mention that the reason that I called was because I've got something heavy on my heart. Yeah. Allowing for that time is a real gift that you can give that person. I think the other piece that can be really helpful is you don't have to press a 9 for an opinion on something that ultimately doesn't matter. If I tell you I don't care where we're going for dinner, I probably really don't care where we're going for dinner. It's okay for you to move forward without hearing my opinion on that. I do care about things that matter about our relationship, about how we are living in the world, and those pieces. And so if you've made me use all of my energy on deciding what show we're going to watch, you're going to I'm going to lose the energy for telling you what matters in other places. And
this is one of my favorite things I think about the Enneagram is its ability to build our compassion for each other. And what I just heard you say is, see me for who I am, rather than attempting to have me respond the way that you want me or need me to respond, right? And I think that's totally fair to say, it's gonna take me a little time. So I don't hear you saying, if I'm sitting with a 9 and I'm wondering why the 9 is not sharing openly and freely with me, to pull it out of me. No, I'm hearing, give me a few minutes. Like I'll warm up to that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's great. Let's play Mythbusters for a minute. This might be our last question as we're running short on time. But what do you think the world is misunderstanding or has the tendency to misunderstand about the 9?
I think the world can misunderstand that the type 9 is just taking others' directions. I think at our best, 9s can hear other perspectives and collate that into a right way for us all to move forward. And that may not be a novel creative idea just from one person, but the creativity that comes from bringing different perspectives together is, I think, the gift of the 9. And that's not secondary. That is a really primary force that we need more of in our world. And so even if it is moving slower, that doesn't mean that it's not happening, that there is a real generative process that can come through that.
Yeah, and what I hear in that is this virtue of right action. I mean, I love thinking about the work of the Enneagram not as shedding anything, because we don't actually need to shed anything. All we need to do, perhaps, is incorporate some things that we've left to the side, and this notion of moving to action, but with an acknowledgement and a holding for all the things. You've said that so beautifully, Liz. It's like you're a 9 or something. Thank you for that. What is on your mind that we've not had? These conversations are too short, I think, but any other ounces of good insight or wisdom that you would leave us with today?
What I would say to anyone who is starting their path on the Enneagram is don't stop at finding the description of your type and go, oh yeah, that's me. Because that is only, in some ways, I think can be harmful, because then you reify, like, oh, I'm just going to check out. I'm not going to be involved in pieces. I'm not the leader. You can start giving yourself all sorts of wrong messages if you pause at, here's the description of a 9. I think the strength of Enneagram is when you get to, here is me as a 9, how I can use the gifts of the others in the Enneagram, both directly the people that are those other types and what I can learn from them, but also just knowing those characteristics. That's the gift of the Enneagram, is that you get to use all of the types. You aren't just that one type.
Gosh, Liz, I think you need to be my co-host. Thank you. The Enneagram is an invitation to fullness. The Enneagram is an invitation to completeness, and remembering, because we already are full and complete, but it's an invitation to remember, to unlock. It is so much more than just, here is your box, now go live in it. I love that.
It's remembering, it's not excusing.
Right. Yes. Liz, this time has been a gift for me, no doubt for those who are listening along with us. I want to thank you for that. We're going to move in our second season and beyond into some interactive conversations between types to look at things that we have in common, things, interesting ways that we interact and intersect with other types. So maybe you'd be up for coming back for us with that?
I'd be glad to.
All right, Liz, thank you so much. Take care of yourself, be well, and we will see you soon.
Likewise, thank you.
We hope you are taking away a new learning or insight today, maybe about yourself, someone in your life, or both. If so, time well spent. And if you are ready to explore this work on a more personal level, I invite you to be in touch. Visit us on the web at forwardbound.com. That's FOURWARDBOUND.com. There you can learn more about our coaching and Enneagram education work and schedule yourself for a free of charge discovery call. Finally, we look forward to welcoming you back for another episode of Fourward Bound with the Enneagram very soon. Again, thanks for spending this time with us. Be well.